I have received a letter from the honourable member for Denison proposing that a definite matter of public importance be submitted to the House for discussion, namely the urgent need for a national housing strategy. I call upon all those honourable members who approve of the proposed discussion to rise in their places, and I call the member for Denison.
Well, thank you, Speaker. It goes without saying, Speaker, that Australia is a very lucky country. Australia is a very rich country. We are the 13th biggest economy in the world, and our per capita national wealth is second only to the Swiss. So, Speaker, it beggars belief that in Australia these days so many people are finding it so difficult when it comes to housing accessibility and affordability. Indeed, Deputy Speaker, when I look at the most recent 2016 census figures, I see that 116,427 people are homeless. A country with a relatively small population like our own, Deputy Speaker, over 100,000 people are homeless. And even in my small state of Tasmania, over 1,500 people homeless. In the electorate of Denison, over 500 people are homeless. It beggars belief. In fact, those who have been following the Tasmanian media in recent months would have seen the appalling situation of whole families camped out in tents at the showground. We even had a short period where people were camped out in tents on the lawns of our state parliament house. And that's just the homeless. And when it comes to people, disadvantaged people, who are relying on public or social housing, the latest figures are, just in Tasmania, over 3,400 families on the public housing waiting list. That's over 3,400 people and families on the public housing waiting list. And the delay to get public housing in Tasmania for priority applicants is now blown out to 63 weeks. When it comes to people buying a house, it's now judged that Australia is second only to Hong Kong, when it comes to the affordability of buying a property. And it's not just Sydney or Melbourne, which do soak up a lot of the media attention. Just in Hobart in the last roughly 12 months, our market has gone up by over 13%, an unsustainable growth in the price of property and of buying property. Moreover, the affordability of rent is likewise going up steeply. And when I look at the latest rental affordability index, I see that it judges that Greater Sydney, Greater Adelaide and Greater Hobart are all judged unaffordable. When I look at the regions, the rest of New South Wales out of New South Wales judged as unaffordable. This is a remarkable situation. And you know the most unaffordable rental market in the country, Deputy Speaker, is Hobart. Because when you look at the average local wages versus average local rents, we are the most expensive capital city now, or the most unaffordable capital city, more accurately, when it comes to renting a home. And there's a whole raft of suburbs, like the Hobart CBD, Sandy Bay, West Hobart, South Hobart, North Hobart, Kingston, Margate and Surreal are all judged unaffordable according to the latest rental affordability index. And, Deputy Speaker, let me just say here, I'm not having a go at any one state government, any one council or any one party here in this place, because when you take a step back and you look at the situation holistically, Deputy Speaker, you can see there has been a failure of public policy right across this country, at the federal level, at the state level, at the local government level for many years. This is a housing accessibility and affordability crisis in this country that has been coming for many years, and no party, no level of government is beyond sin. However, Deputy Speaker, just as it's been the federal government, the state governments and the local governments that have caused this problem, it is similarly within the power of the federal government, the state governments, the territory governments and local governments to fix the problem. But fixing the problem needs to start, Deputy Speaker, with a genuine national housing strategy. We need to take a step back and we need to look at how we can possibly combine public policy and the use of resources, the expenditure of money at the federal level, at the state and territory level, at the local government level, to ensure that every person in this country, Deputy Speaker, has their fundamental right to a safe and comfortable roof over their head met. It's only when we take the politics out of this and we work collegiately in places like this, work collegiately between Canberra and the state and territory capitals, work collegiately with local government, can we then really pull together a genuine national housing strategy. And I'll give you a few ideas, Deputy Speaker, about the sort of things that a national housing strategy might include. For a start, we need more crisis accommodation, because the people most in need of a roof over their head are those in crisis. People who, through no fault of their own, are literally sleeping in the bush, under bridges, in someone's garage, under their house, in their laundry. We need much more investment in crisis accommodation. Deputy Speaker, I make the point again. Measured by per capita national wealth, we are the second richest people on the planet. Surely in a country as rich as ours, we shouldn't have over 100,000 homeless people, and many of them in abject poverty and in crisis. Surely we can afford to put a roof over their head. And we need more public housing and other social housing. Again, we can afford it. It's madness that in a place as small as Tasmania we have over 3,500 families and people waiting for public housing, and that the waiting time for priority applicants is over 60 weeks in a country as rich as ours. That is unforgivable, Deputy Speaker. And we need more supported accommodation for people with specific needs. You know, we talk a lot about mental health in this place, although not nearly enough, Deputy Speaker. We should be talking more about supported accommodation for people with specific needs. That's the way to start addressing things like the mental health crisis in this country, and for other people who have special needs. And we need to regulate Airbnb. Look, I'm not anti-Airbnb, but when you see a place like Hobart, where so many long-term rentals are being turned into short-term holiday accommodation, you start to understand why there is not long-term rentals available for Australians who need it. Airbnb needs to be returned to its original purpose of making spare rooms available. And yes, Deputy Speaker, we do need to reform negative gearing and capital gains tax. And it's regrettable that that issue has become a political football for the government and the opposition to just kick backwards and forwards. Why don't we put our heads together and say, well, how can we genuinely reform such measures to genuinely make accommodation in this country more affordable and more accessible? And the states need to consider, and particularly in my home state of Tasmania, rent-to-buy public housing, like used to be the case around this country and is still the case in other countries, where when particularly disadvantaged people on low income, when they're paying that rent, they're actually paying off that house with the hope, a reasonable hope that one day they will own that property and it will turn that family's fortunes around. And what about a 30% increase in Commonwealth rent assistance, $20 a week? Just imagine what that would do for housing affordability and accessibility for disadvantaged and low-income people in this country. It would really start to turn it around. And it would be a modest cost to the budget. You know, the budget this year, Deputy Speaker, is about $500 billion. $500 billion. We can afford to double our submarine fleet. We can afford to have people in this place on $200,000 a year for sitting on the backbench and doing bugger all. But yet it's so hard to get $20 a week extra for people who most need it. And the Commonwealth could abolish Tasmania's Commonwealth housing debt, because half of the money that comes to Tasmania for public housing goes straight back to Canberra in interest payments. And the Gillard government, when it needed the support of South Australia for the Gonski reforms, it was happy to waive the debt then because it was politically expedient, but won't waive the debt now for a state like Tasmania. That would benefit mightily by the Commonwealth axing that debt. And there are so many other things we could do. Even greater restrictions on foreign investment. I note that in 15-16, foreigners bought over $40 million of residential property in Hobart. 16-17, foreigners bought over $20 million of residential property in Hobart. No wonder the prices is going up. No wonder there's not property for local people to buy or to rent. It's because of forces like that. And other innovative measures, Deputy Speaker. I had an email just in the last few days, last several weeks, from a constituent who said, What about not-for-profit funds where people could invest their spare money and those funds could then buy low-cost housing for people to rent to make housing more affordable? Deputy Speaker, there's 1,001 ways we could make property much more affordable and accessible in this country, but none of it will start until we get a national housing strategy to pull it all together. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
And I call